Captain Zixathara of the Galactic Compliance Division had seen many strange things during her 40 rotations of service. She had witnessed the silicon-based Crystallians attempt to negotiate trade agreements through interpretive dance, observed the gaseous nebuloids try to establish diplomatic relations by changing colors rapidly, and even watched the militant Thoraxians declare war on an asteroid because it looked at them funny. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for what she was seeing on the human monitoring screens. A small, four-legged creature with floppy ears was sitting next to a human female who appeared to be experiencing what the psychological reports called anxiety. The creature did nothing extraordinary. It simply existed in proximity to the distressed human. Yet as Captain Zixathara watched through the surveillance feeds from Earth, something impossible happened. The human's stress levels, clearly visible through their bioscanners, began to decrease, not through medication, not through technology, not through any logical intervention, simply because of the presence of this small animal. "Computer, analyze the bio-readings again," Zixathara commanded, her three eyes focusing intently on the data streams flowing across her command console. "There must be an error in our equipment." "Analysis complete, Captain. Bio-readings are accurate. Human stress hormones have decreased by 47% in the presence of the canine specimen. Heart rate has stabilized. Neural activity in regions associated with anxiety has diminished significantly." The captain's mandibles clicked together nervously, a sound that echoed through the sterile bridge of her observation vessel. This was the third such incident she had documented this rotation alone. Humans throughout their planet seemed to possess these creatures that somehow, inexplicably, altered their psychological and physiological states through mere proximity. The implications were staggering. On another screen, she watched an elderly human male sitting in what appeared to be a medical facility. Beside him lay a large, golden-furred creature that the humans called a dog. The man's readings showed elevated stress typical of someone facing serious illness. But when he placed his hand on the animal's head, his cortisol levels dropped dramatically. His breathing became more regular. Even his immune system markers improved. "This violates every known principle of biological interaction," muttered her science officer Kelnara from her position at the analysis station. "There are no pheromonal exchanges, no detectable energy fields, no technological interfaces. How can one species affect another so profoundly through simple physical presence?" Zixathara had been asking herself the same question for weeks now. Ever since the Galactic Council had assigned her to conduct a preliminary assessment of Earth's readiness for first contact, she had been discovering increasingly disturbing evidence of human capabilities that defied conventional understanding. But this phenomenon was perhaps the most alarming yet. She switched the viewing screen to another location on the human planet. This time she observed a small human child, possibly 6 rotations old by human standards, sitting in a corner of what appeared to be an educational facility. The child was clearly distressed, exhibiting all the biomarkers of social anxiety that were universal among sentient species. Other human children nearby seemed to be engaging in typical social dominance behaviors, excluding the solitary child from their activities. Then, from seemingly nowhere, a small feline creature approached the distressed child. It was tiny, even by human standards, with gray and white markings and large green eyes. The creature simply curled up beside the child and began producing a rhythmic vibration that their translators identified as purring. Within minutes, the child's stress response completely normalized. More remarkably, the child's confidence levels began to increase. Soon, the young human was interacting with both the animal and eventually with the other children. The transformation was complete and seemingly permanent. "Captain," Kelnara called out, her voice tinged with something that sounded suspiciously like fear. "I'm detecting similar patterns across the entire planet. These animals Dogs, cats, rabbits, birds, and dozens of other species, they're all demonstrating this same effect on human psychology. But it's not just temporary comfort. They're actually altering human neurochemistry in ways that enhance resilience, reduce aggression, and increase social bonding. Zixthara felt her primary heart skip a beat. Are you suggesting that humans have somehow weaponized emotional manipulation through domesticated animals? I'm suggesting something far more disturbing, Captain. I don't think this is deliberate manipulation. I think this is natural symbiosis that has evolved over thousands of human years. These creatures have learned to read and respond to human emotional states with such precision that they can reliably alter human psychological functioning. And the humans have developed such deep neural pathways for bonding with these animals that the mere presence of their pets can override their natural stress responses. The implications hit Zixthara like a meteor strike. If humans possessed the natural ability to form such profound emotional bonds with other species that those relationships could literally alter their brain chemistry, what would happen when humans encountered other sentient aliens? What if humans could form these same devastating emotional connections with other galactic species? She remembered the reports from the Andromedan scouts who had observed human behavior during their global conflicts. Even in the midst of warfare, humans had been documented sharing their rations with injured animals, risking their lives to rescue pets from burning buildings, and maintaining care for these creatures even when resources were scarce. The emotional bonds appeared to override even survival instincts. Kelnara, pull up the files on human military personnel. I want to see if these animals accompany humans in combat situations. The data that appeared on her screens made her blood run cold. Not only did humans maintain these emotional support relationships during warfare, but the presence of these animals actually improved human combat effectiveness. Soldiers with animal companions showed enhanced unit cohesion, better stress management under fire, and increased motivation to protect their fellow humans. But perhaps most disturbing of all were the documented cases of humans who had lost their animal companions. The grief responses were unlike anything in the galactic database. Humans would risk everything, sacrifice anything, and fight against impossible odds to protect or avenge their animal partners. The emotional devastation of losing these creatures could incapacitate humans for extended periods, but it could also trigger rage responses that made them formidable and unpredictable opponents. Captain, there's something else, Kelnara said quietly. I've been analyzing the brain scans of humans who interact regularly with these animals. Their neural development is significantly different from humans who don't have pets. Enhanced empathy centers, improved emotional regulation, increased capacity for forming social bonds. It's as if these animals are actually shaping human evolution toward increased emotional intelligence and interpersonal connection. Zixthara stared at the data, her mind racing through the possibilities. Humans weren't just keeping pets for companionship. They were unknowingly engaging in a form of emotional enhancement that was creating a species with unprecedented capacity for psychological resilience and social bonding. And if humans could form these bonds with simple animals, what would happen when they encountered the vast diversity of sentient life in the galaxy? The thought that terrified her most was what the Galactic Council's reaction would be when they learned about this. The Council prized emotional control, logical decision-making, and predictable behavioral patterns among member species. Humans, with their enhanced emotional capabilities and unpredictable bonding behaviors, would be seen as a threat to galactic stability. She thought about the Veltarian Empire, with their rigid caste system based on emotional suppression, or the Quantum Collective, who had achieved perfect logical thinking by eliminating all emotional responses from their society. How would they react to a species that had actually enhanced their emotional capabilities through interspecies bonding? Chelinara, I want you to begin drafting a preliminary report for the Council. Classification level. Make it Omega priority. We need to warn them about this before any formal contact is established. As her science officer began compiling the data, Zix Thara continued watching the human monitoring feeds. On one screen, a human veteran with obvious signs of psychological trauma was being approached by a large dog wearing some sort of official vest. Within moments of the dog's arrival, the veteran's stress indicators began normalizing. The animal seemed to anticipate the human's needs, providing physical contact precisely when required and maintaining a calming presence that allowed the human to function normally in public. On another screen, a human child with what appeared to be developmental differences was interacting with a specially trained horse. The animal's patient, gentle responses were helping the child develop social skills and emotional regulation that traditional human interventions had failed to achieve. The more she watched, the more convinced Zix Thara became that humans represented an unprecedented threat to galactic order. Not through military might or technological superiority, but through their capacity for emotional connection that could potentially destabilize the careful psychological balance that maintained peace among the galaxy's diverse species. She opened a secure communication channel to the Galactic Council headquarters. "This is Captain Zix Thara of the Compliance Division, requesting immediate priority conference with the Emergency Assessment Committee. Subject: Human Species Psychological Capabilities Assessment. Threat level: unknown, but potentially extreme." As she waited for the connection to establish, she continued watching the humans and their incomprehensible animal companions. How could such simple creatures wield such profound influence over an entire species? And more importantly, what would happen when the rest of the galaxy discovered humanity's secret weapon wasn't technology or warfare, but love? The emergency assembly chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so packed. Representatives from 47 different species floated, stood, crawled, and hovered in their designated areas, all focused on the central holographic display showing Captain Zix Thara's findings. The low hum of universal translators filled the air as shocked reactions echoed through the chamber in dozens of languages and communication methods. Council Leader Vorthok, a towering crystalline being whose body reflected the chamber's lights in prismatic patterns, raised his primary appendage for silence. "The evidence presented by Captain Zix Thara's reconnaissance mission is deeply troubling. We have observed a species that has somehow achieved what our greatest scientists believed impossible: genuine emotional symbiosis with non-sentient life forms." Ambassador Krelith of the Thoraxian Military Alliance clicked her razor-sharp mandibles aggressively. "This is clearly a form of biological warfare. The humans have weaponized emotional manipulation. They've created living weapons that can alter the psychological state of any species they encounter." "That's precisely what makes them so dangerous," interjected Dr. Yilmandra from the Galactic Institute of Psychological Sciences. Her tentacles writhed nervously as she accessed data from her portable research terminal. "My preliminary analysis suggests that human emotional resonance patterns are incredibly adaptable. If they can form these profound bonds with simple Earth animals, they could potentially establish similar connections with any of our species." A ripple of alarmed communications swept through the chamber. The representative from the emotion-suppressed collective, a pale humanoid figure speaking through mechanical vocal cords, stood to address the assembly. "Our society achieved perfect order by eliminating emotional variables from decision-making processes. The introduction of humans with enhanced emotional manipulation capabilities would destroy our social structure within a single generation." The Veltarian Emperor's holographic projection flickered as he transmitted his response from his home world. "The Empire has maintained stability for 3,000 rotations through strict emotional hierarchy. Our citizens feel only what the state determines appropriate for their caste level. These humans, with their uncontrolled emotional bonding, would shatter our entire civilization. Captain Zixathara activated additional holographic displays showing more recent surveillance footage. Honorable Council members, I believe the threat is even greater than we initially assessed. Our continued observation has revealed that humans don't just bond with animals randomly. They seem capable of selecting specific animals whose psychological traits complement their individual emotional needs. The new footage showed a human child who exhibited signs of hyperactivity and attention difficulties paired with an exceptionally calm, patient dog. Another screen displayed a human adult recovering from trauma working with a horse that somehow anticipated and responded to flashback episodes before they became severe. They're not just forming random emotional attachments, Zixathara continued. They're creating precisely calibrated psychological support systems. Each human-animal pairing appears to be carefully matched to provide exactly the emotional regulation that individual requires. Dr. Abul-Yilmandra's research terminal began projecting complex neural pathway analyses. This suggests an even more disturbing possibility. If humans can instinctively select animals that complement their psychological needs, they might possess unconscious abilities to read and respond to emotional states across species barriers. They could potentially form manipulative relationships with any of us. The Quantum Collective's representative, whose consciousness existed as a pattern of organized light, pulsed with alarmed frequencies. Our species eliminated physical form to achieve pure logical thought. But if humans can establish emotional connections that transcend physical existence, they could potentially corrupt our consciousness patterns themselves. Ambassador Telvanni from the Aquatic Federation raised her voice above the growing chaos. Has anyone considered that this might not be deliberate manipulation? Perhaps humans are simply naturally empathic to an unprecedented degree? That makes them even more dangerous, snapped Ambassador Krelith. Deliberate manipulation can be defended against. Natural empathy that operates below conscious awareness cannot be resisted. The chamber erupted in heated discussion as representatives began calculating how human emotional bonding capabilities might affect their respective civilizations. The silicon-based confederation worried that humans might somehow form attachments to their crystalline life forms, disrupting their perfectly ordered mineral societies. The gaseous nebuloids feared that human emotions might somehow alter their atmospheric compositions. Council leader Vorthak called for order once again. We must consider practical implications. Captain Zixathara, what would happen if we simply prohibited humans from bringing these animals into galactic space? Zixathara activated another series of displays showing human psychological profiles. Our analysis suggests that separating humans from their animal companions would result in severe psychological destabilization. Stress levels increase dramatically, cognitive function decreases, and in extreme cases, humans exhibit complete behavioral breakdown. She showed footage of human military personnel who had lost their animal partners in combat. The grief responses were so intense that the humans became either completely non-functional or dangerously unpredictable. Removing their animals doesn't eliminate the threat. It transforms stable, emotionally regulated humans into psychologically unstable individuals with enhanced emotional bonding capabilities. Dr. Yilmandra tentacle-typed furiously as she ran calculations. Actually, Captain, I think you've identified something even more significant. Look at these neural scans of humans who have been separated from their animals for extended periods. New data appeared showing brain activity patterns. The emotional bonding pathways don't disappear when the animals are removed. They intensify. Humans separated from their animal companions show increased emotional sensitivity and a desperate drive to form new attachments. They become even more likely to bond with whatever sentient beings they encounter. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. Removing human emotional support animals wouldn't solve the problem. It would make humans more dangerous by intensifying their need to form emotional connections with other species. Ambassador Vexara from the Trade Federation raised a practical concern. But surely we can establish protocols, create emotional barriers, develop technology to block these bonding processes? We tried that with other empathic species, replied Dr. Yilmandra grimly. The empathic Zeta Reticuli, for example. We created psychic dampening fields to limit their emotional influence. The result was a complete collapse of their civilization. Empathic species cannot function normally when their emotional capabilities are artificially suppressed. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the problem became clear. Humans couldn't be allowed to bring their emotion-altering animals into galactic space, but they couldn't be forced to leave them behind without becoming psychologically unstable and potentially more dangerous. Captain Zixathera continued her presentation with increasingly disturbing data. Our extended observation has also revealed that human emotional bonding extends beyond individual relationships. When humans form emotional attachments to animals, they also develop enhanced protective instincts toward their entire community. Humans with strong animal bonds show increased willingness to sacrifice for others, enhanced cooperative behaviors, and greater resistance to psychological manipulation by hostile forces. You're describing a species with built-in psychological warfare resistance, observed the representative from the Intelligence Gathering Consortium. They've accidentally created a population that cannot be controlled through traditional fear or reward-based manipulation. The Military Strategic Council's liaison stepped forward. Our psychological warfare experts have been analyzing human history. Every attempt to control human populations through emotional manipulation has eventually failed when humans maintain strong emotional support systems. But populations separated from their emotional support networks become much more susceptible to external control. The terrible irony was becoming apparent to everyone in the chamber. The very emotional bonding capabilities that made humans dangerous also made them impossible to control through conventional means. Any attempt to remove their emotional support systems would either destabilize them completely or drive them to form even stronger bonds with galactic species. Council leader Vorthak's crystalline body dimmed as he processed the implications. So our options are to allow humans into galactic space with their emotion-altering animals, potentially disrupting our established social orders, or to prohibit their animals and risk contact with psychologically unstable humans who are desperate to form emotional bonds with our species. There is a third option, said Ambassador Krelith coldly. We classify humans as a dangerous, psychologically infectious species and quarantine their entire planet indefinitely. The suggestion sent shockwaves through the chamber. Quarantining an entire planet was an extreme measure reserved only for species that posed existential threats to galactic civilization. That might be our only choice, agreed the emotion-suppressed collective representative. The risk of psychological contamination is too great. If humans can form these profound emotional bonds with simple animals, imagine what they could do to advanced civilizations that have spent millennia developing careful emotional control. Dr. Yilmandra accessed additional research data. Actually, there's something else we need to consider. Our anthropological studies suggest that human emotional bonding capabilities are still evolving. They're becoming more sophisticated with each generation. If we wait too long to make a decision, they might develop even more advanced emotional connection abilities. The chamber buzzed with worried communications as representatives began to realize that the human problem was not static. Every day of delay potentially made humans more dangerous to galactic psychological stability. The vote is clear before us, announced Council Leader Vorthak. We must decide whether to classify humans as a quarantined species based on their dangerous emotional bonding capabilities or attempt to establish contact protocols that somehow account for their animal companions. As the Council prepared to make what might be the most significant decision in galactic history, Captain Zixathara provided one final piece of data that would change everything. Council members, there's one more factor you should consider. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected that humans are already beginning to develop space travel capabilities. Within 50 rotations, they'll achieve interplanetary flight. Within 100 rotations, they may develop faster-than-light travel. The decision of whether to make contact may no longer be ours to make. Dr. Sarah Chen had been working late in the Kepler Deep Space Observatory when the impossible happened. The radio telescope arrays that had been scanning empty space for decades suddenly erupted with structured signals, clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, and clearly not from Earth. Her hands trembled as she initiated the verification protocols, but there was no mistake. Humanity had just received its first confirmed message from an alien civilization. What she couldn't have known was that 3 light-years away, Captain Zixithara was desperately trying to prevent her government from making the biggest mistake in galactic history. "The vote has been counted," announced Council Leader Vorthok, his crystalline form reflecting the somber mood of the emergency assembly. By a margin of 32 to 15, the Galactic Council declares humanity a Class 7 psychological hazard. Earth is hereby placed under indefinite quarantine. No contact is to be established with humans until their emotional bonding capabilities can be neutralized or contained. Captain Zixithara felt her primary heart sink. Months of observation had convinced her that the Council was making a catastrophic error based on fear rather than understanding. "Council Leader, I must formally protest this decision. My continued observation suggests that human emotional bonding capabilities could be beneficial to galactic civilization, not destructive." "Captain," interjected Ambassador Krelith sharply, "your objectivity has been compromised by extended exposure to human behavior patterns. You're exhibiting sympathy for the subjects of your reconnaissance mission." The accusation stung because Zixithara knew it contained an element of truth. During her months of observing human-animal relationships, she had begun to experience something unprecedented in her own psychology. Watching humans care for their animal companions with such devotion, seeing the genuine joy and comfort these relationships provided, had stirred emotions in her that Thoraxian society had spent centuries suppressing. "Perhaps," she admitted, "but that only proves my point. If humans can inspire empathy in a species as emotionally controlled as the Thoraxians, imagine what they could accomplish with civilizations facing social problems, psychological disorders, or cultural conflicts." Dr. Yilmandra, who had been quietly analyzing data throughout the proceedings, suddenly activated her research terminal with urgent tentacle movements. "Council members, I'm receiving real-time intelligence from our monitoring stations. The humans have just detected our observation signals. They know we're here." The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives realized that the carefully planned quarantine had just become impossible to maintain. Humans had discovered alien surveillance and would now know they were being watched by advanced civilizations. "How is that possible?" demanded Council Leader Vorthok. "Our stealth technology is centuries ahead of their capabilities." "Apparently not ahead enough," replied Dr. Yilmandra grimly. "Human ingenuity combined with their enhanced emotional intelligence has led to intuitive scientific breakthroughs that our models never predicted. They've developed detection methods based on pattern recognition that operates partially on emotional logic rather than pure mathematical analysis." Captain Zixithara accessed the monitoring feeds and watched as human scientists around Earth began coordinating their response to the alien signals. What she saw confirmed her worst fears about the Council's decision. "Council members, you need to see this immediately." The holographic displays showed human research facilities where scientists worked alongside their emotional support animals. At the Kepler Observatory, Dr. Chen was discussing the alien signals with her dog, Max, who had been specially trained to provide emotional support during high-stress research situations. At CERN, theoretical physicists were working on faster-than-light communication theories, while their therapy cats provided the emotional stability needed for breakthrough thinking. "They're not panicking," Zixthera observed. "Every other species we've studied shows fear, aggression, or submission when they discover they're being observed by superior civilizations. But humans are maintaining emotional equilibrium because of their animal companions, and that stability is allowing them to think clearly about the implications." On the screens, they watched human leaders from around the world convening emergency sessions. But instead of military preparations or panic responses, humans were establishing international cooperation protocols and beginning to draft communication strategies for potential alien contact. Even more remarkably, many of these critical meetings included emotional support animals. World leaders were making decisions about humanity's future while accompanied by dogs, cats, and other creatures that provided the psychological stability needed for clear thinking under unprecedented stress. "This is exactly what we feared," muttered the emotion-suppressed collective representative. "They're using emotional regulation to maintain cognitive function under extreme stress. They're going to be impossible to intimidate or control." Dr. Yilmandra's research feeds began showing something even more concerning. "Council members, I'm detecting coordinated responses across human population centers. They're not just maintaining individual emotional stability, they're sharing that stability across their entire species through their communication networks." The displays showed humans around the world posting images and videos of their pets, sharing stories of how their animal companions were helping them cope with the stress of alien contact. Social media networks were flooded with humans providing emotional support to each other through shared experiences with their animals. "They've created a global emotional support network," Dr. Yilmandra continued in amazement. "Individual humans are using their animals to regulate their own stress, then using that stability to provide emotional support to other humans across their communication systems. They're not just psychologically resilient, they're making their entire species more resilient in real time." Ambassador Creelith clicked her mandibles in alarm. "They're coordinating a psychological defense response without even realizing it. This is more sophisticated than our most advanced emotional warfare countermeasures." Captain Zixthera watched the human responses with growing admiration and terror. On one feed, she observed a group of human children at an elementary school where teachers had brought therapy dogs to help students process the news of alien contact. Instead of fear or confusion, the children were asking thoughtful questions about alien life and expressing curiosity about potential friendships with beings from other worlds. At a retirement home, elderly humans were discussing their hopes that aliens might have solutions to diseases and suffering, while their therapy animals provided comfort that allowed them to think optimistically rather than fearfully about the unknown. Most remarkably, at military installations around the world, human soldiers were maintaining defensive readiness while avoiding aggressive posturing, largely because their military working dogs were keeping stress levels manageable and allowing for clear strategic thinking. "They're not responding like any species in our database," observed the Intelligence Gathering Consortium representative. "They're simultaneously prepared for multiple possibilities, friendship, hostility, or neutral contact, without committing prematurely to any single response strategy." Council Leader Vorthak's crystalline form pulsed with concerned frequencies. "Captain Zixthera, what is your assessment of human behavior patterns based on this first contact scenario?" Zixthera studied the feeds carefully before responding. "Council Leader, I believe the humans are demonstrating exactly why the quarantine order was a mistake. They're showing unprecedented emotional maturity, species-wide cooperation, and strategic flexibility. These are not the behaviors of a dangerous species. These are the behaviors of a species that could bring unprecedented stability to galactic civilization, or unprecedented chaos," countered Ambassador Creelith. "Their emotional bonding capabilities are so advanced that they could destabilize any species they encounter." Actually, Dr. Yilmandra interrupted, her tentacles working frantically over her research terminal, I think Captain Zixathera may be correct. I've been analyzing the human response patterns, and they're not trying to manipulate or control. They're offering emotional support freely to their own species without expecting anything in return. Their bonding behaviors appear to be genuinely altruistic rather than manipulative. She activated new displays showing detailed analysis of human communication patterns during the crisis. Look at this data. Humans are sharing emotional resources, providing comfort to strangers, and maintaining psychological stability across their entire population. This isn't emotional manipulation, this is emotional generosity. The implications began to dawn on council members as they realized they might have misinterpreted human emotional bonding as a threat when it was actually an unprecedented form of interspecies cooperation. But what happens when they achieve space travel? Asked the Trade Federation representative. How do we interact with a species that could form emotional bonds with any of us? Captain Zixathera activated one final set of displays showing human space program facilities. Actually, council members, I believe that's the question we should have been asking all along. Not how to protect ourselves from human emotional bonding, but how to benefit from it. The screens showed human astronauts training with specially selected emotional support animals that could function in zero-gravity environments. Human space agencies were already developing protocols for maintaining psychological health during long space voyages through continued animal companionship. They're going to bring their emotional support capabilities into space with them, Zixathera continued. The question isn't whether we should allow this. They're going to achieve space travel with or without our permission. The question is whether we want to meet them as potential allies who could help solve our own social and psychological problems, or as enemies who we've treated with unjustified hostility. Dr. Yilmandra activated a final analysis showing psychological profiles of galactic species. Council members, consider our own civilizations. The emotion-suppressed collective struggles with creativity and innovation. The Veltarian Empire faces regular rebellion due to psychological oppression. The Crystalline Confederation has difficulty adapting to change. We all have psychological limitations that human emotional bonding capabilities might actually help us overcome. The chamber fell silent as council members began to realize that humanity's emotional support systems might represent an opportunity rather than a threat. Species that had achieved order through emotional suppression might benefit from controlled interaction with beings who had mastered emotional regulation through positive bonding. Council Leader Vorthak's crystalline form brightened as he processed new possibilities. Captain Zixathera, what would you recommend as our response to human space development? I recommend we prepare for the inevitable, she replied. Humans will achieve interstellar travel within our projected time frame. When they do, they'll bring their emotional support animals with them. We can either meet them with fear and hostility, or we can prepare to learn from species that has achieved something none of us managed. Genuine emotional intelligence combined with technological advancement. As the Council began reconsidering their hasty quarantine decision, none of them could have predicted that the first human interstellar mission would launch sooner than projected. Dr. Sarah Chen, inspired by her emotional support dog's calming presence during the alien signal crisis, had just made breakthrough calculations for faster-than-light communication. Her enhanced emotional stability had led to intuitive scientific insights that pure logic alone could never have achieved. Within months, humans would be knocking on the galaxy's door, and they would be bringing their dogs, cats, rabbits, and every other emotional support companion that had helped them become the most psychologically advanced species the galaxy had ever encountered.